If there's one thing we can say about Tite Kubo, he sure knows how to draw some bad. Kubo provides an endless source of material for, let's say, research. However, what if I told you he wrote the perfect fan service character and then sidelined her? I'm talking about Rangiku Matsumoto. Everyone remembers the and cute smile, but no one remembers the little girl who lost everything because of Aizen, the woman who practically raised half of Soul Society, or the lieutenant who never stopped smiling despite carrying that pain. She isn't just a fan service character, she's the fan service character that stole our hearts in Bleach, and I'll show you how. Cue my music. On the highway and I'm thinking that I love her. Rangiku's relationship with Gin Ichimaru has to be arguably the most devastating romantic arc in all of shonen. And to understand the full weight of this statement, we have to turn to Kubo's poem expressing how Gin feels towards Rangiku. If tomorrow you were to become a snake and begin to devour humans, and with that same mouth that devoured humans, you cried that you loved me, would I still be able to say, I love you, just as I do today? In Arrancar, the outskirts of Soul Society, the place where Rangiku and Gin grew up as children, one day, young Gin noticed a Shinigami with his other 3 henchmen collecting souls from innocent civilians. It was younger Sosuke Aizen who's collecting these souls in order to create his own Hogyoku, the orb that can dissolve the boundary between Hollow and Shinigami and grant the owner's deepest desires. It was from here Gin realized Aizen had stolen a large part of Rangiku's soul. Gin must get back what was taken from Rangiku no matter the cost, even if it means becoming the worst version of himself to protect his better half, which would alter the course of Gin's life forever, while characterizing Rangiku's relationship with this man. Distance. Not the loud one after a huge fight or emotional climax, but a slow burn over time with brief exchanges and flashbacks that Kubo strategically uses to build their relationship. In one of the many brief flashbacks, we get Rangiku in a dream state, remembering the first time meeting Gin as children. Fatigued by starvation, Rangiku is lying on the ground, where a young boy runs across Rangiku who notices her deprived state. Gin. He mentions to Rangiku the reason she feels intense hunger is it's a sign she has high spiritual pressure. But what makes this flashback sequence impactful is the timing when she dreams this. Leading up to Rukyo Kuchiki's execution, we start to see Aizen reveal his hand by staging his own death. Momo Hinamori, his lieutenant devoted to Aizen, seeks vengeance for a captain, suspects Gin of murdering him. She is then imprisoned for attacking a captain, where she then receives a dying letter from Aizen, leading her to think Toshiro Hitsugaya was the culprit. The Council of 46 has all been found to be mysteriously destroyed, and now Rangiku must fight Izuru, a fellow Shinigami, by Gin's orders. Gin attacks Momo and Rangiku protects her, but she questions Gin for his intentions. And this is what makes the dynamic between Rangiku and Gin so interesting in the early parts of Bleach. Gin is her childhood friend and first semblance of what she can call family, but for some reason, she can never get a read on him. She says it herself that Gin has a bad habit of leaving and not telling her anything. Although later we come to understand Gin's true intentions, for Rangiku she is left in the dark the entire time. It is not terrifying to know sorrow. Terrifying it is to know can't go back to the happiness could have had. This is another poem written by Kubo that perfectly explains Rangiku's feelings towards Gin. As his childhood friend, she envisioned a life where he was in it. They joined the Shinigami Academy together. They both obtained high-ranking status in Soul Society, but they can never have a straight-on conversation. What makes this so thematically compelling is how Rangiku's relationship with Gin directly juxtaposes her own natural personality. Tite Kubo does a great job showcasing her as the comedic side character who can get a little too close sometimes. With Gin, it can be characterized as the exact opposite. One small moment that is worth noting is in her short chapter called Blooming Under a Cold Moon. It is Toshiro's birthday, and Aizen, who is still a part of Soul Society, wants to celebrate his birthday. As Rangiku, Hitsugaya, Aizen, and Momo were watching the fireworks celebration, Hitsugaya mentions that he doesn't know his real birthday since he lived outside of the Seirete in Rukangai. Rangiku, who grew up in Rukangai as well, remembered a moment with Gin, where Gin sets her birthday as the day they both met. But now Rangiku is where she is, and Gin is nowhere to be seen. Re-establishing her poem, these were the moments she wanted to last forever. Heading into the fake Karakura-tan arc, we see the climax of the romantic arc take place. After being healed by Izuru, with her barely having the strength to move on, she rushes towards Gin. Here's where we see the ultimate reveal that Gin was a traitor to Aizen the entire time, moving in vengeance for Rangiku, but ultimately losing to Aizen. However, this isn't what makes this devastating. We've come to learn all Gin wanted to do was take away Rangiku's tears, growing up impoverished in Rukangai with no family, to having a large part of her soul being taken by Aizen. All Gin wanted was to give Rangiku the life that was owed to her, a life without tears. But even with this ambition being so noble, with the route he took to obtain this goal cancels all of it out. Gin betrayed the entire Soul Society, killed many innocent civilians, and exploited his own Lieutenant Izuru's devotion towards him to make him fight Rangiku, and helped Aizen in his grand plan to take over Soul Society. Even if it was to help Rangiku, at what cost? Gin became the snake in order to protect Rangiku. However, the time has come where the snake will eat its own tail. In the end, his revenge attack against Aizen wasn't the most successful one. With Gin laying lifeless on the battlefield, we have Rangiku shedding tears, the tears he couldn't bear to keep being shed. Post Aizen's defeat, Rangiku is still mourning the death of Gin. She recalls how Gin left nothing to remember him by, hoping that she would forget him and move on, and now she must do her best to protect her friends in Soul Society.
Hey, you! That's how you treat a paying customer? A common courtesy.
I didn't mean to be rude.
The one thing Rangiku doesn't get enough credit for is being the emotionally intelligent character carrying the cast on her back. One of her most notable moments being with Orihime during the Arrancar arc. Orihime feels conflicted with her feelings towards Rukia. For context, Ichigo, post-Soul Society arc, has a new problem in handling his inner hollow. This new unchecked source of power got in the way of Ichigo protecting his friends, leading his friend Orihime and Chad to become badly injured during the fight against the Arrancar Yami. Feeling overwhelming guilt, Ichigo can't help but shake the feeling. Even though Orihime has given Ichigo multiple words of reassurance, it was ultimately Rukia who snapped him out of his funk. On the one end, Orihime is thankful for Rukia helping Ichigo emotionally. However, she can't help but feel jealous towards the deep bond these two share. Combine that with Orihime's sense of inadequacy, believing she only holds Ichigo back, and the arc prior, Ichigo risked his life in the Soul Society to save Rukia, Orihime is just an emotional mess at this point in time. This is where we see Rangiku come for Orihime regarding her feelings. Rangiku reminds Orihime that Ichigo is growing as a young Shinigami. He needs all the help he can get, and that requires both Rukia and Orihime's assistance. Keep in mind as well, Orihime was the enemy to the Soul Society, and if they had met under the wrong circumstances, Rangiku would have fought her. This trait of Rangiku to quickly let go of previous contentions isn't just a situational superpower, but something ingrained in Rangiku. We can see this in a multitude of events. Like we went over before, during the Soul Society arc, Rangiku had to go up against two of her fellow Shinigami lieutenants. Izuru, Gin's lieutenant, who is devoted to his captain, fought Rangiku. Also Momo, who accused Gin, Rangiku's lover, and Hitsugaya, Rangiku's captain, of eliminating Captain Aizen. So with these two, Rangiku is justified in feeling very angry towards Izuru and Momo post-Soul Society arc. However, in the end sequences, we see Rangiku leading the alcohol campaign, inviting Izuru to drink with her. And even though Momo wanted to destroy Hitsugaya, when Gin attempted to attack Momo, Rangiku was there to save Momo from her attack. Before that, when Momo became imprisoned for attacking Captain Gin and was given a dying letter from Aizen, Rangiku complimented Momo in letting her know that Aizen thought about her in her last moments show just how faithful of a lieutenant she is. The reason Rangiku has aligned herself in this manner with Izuru and Hinamori, Rangiku understood their emotional state. With Izuru, Rangiku understood he was just following orders and is devoted to his captain at all costs. Especially since these two share a deep bond with Gin, Rangiku couldn't help but invite him for drinks. With Momo, it was the same thing. Rangiku understood Momo is in a distressed state after her captain was pronounced dead. Rangiku's ability to look outside of herself and delve into the emotions of others helped her with her Shinigami peers and Orihime. Where we see her emotional intelligence and personality shine the most is with her captain Hitsugaya. In the series of Bleach, most of the divisions tend to get sidelined screen time wise. However, the 10th division, we get a multitude of moments that showcase the popular tandem between Rangiku and Hitsugaya. Not just because Hitsugaya is clean and Rangiku has a large rack, the nonchalant little brother with the very chalant older sister energy these two share is genuinely compelling. We see this in the first time Hitsugaya and Rangiku meet. Hitsugaya, pre-entry into the Shinigami Academy, was just a resident in Rukangai getting shortchanged by a merchant. This is where Rangiku, who already happened to be a Shinigami, stepped in and argued with the merchant, but not without giving Hitsugaya a piece of her mind as well, explaining that a man should step up in these types of situations. Not too long after, Rangiku recommends Hitsugaya to join the Shinigami Academy, explaining it was his lack of control with the spiritual pressure that's causing his grandmother to become cold, and it was his Zanpakuto, Hyoimaru, speaking to Hitsugaya in his dreams. Also, the personality differences between this iconic tandem. Rangiku, despite being lieutenant, is incredibly lazy, expecting others to do the work for her, and being the baddie that only shows up under the most pressing of situations. In moments like the Soul Society arc, we see Rangiku sleeping in Hitsugaya's office, to then question him why Hitsugaya was in her quarters. When Hitsugaya was under Rangiku in the 10th division, she consistently pawned off her work to Hitsugaya, showing the workload these two share in everyday life in the Gotei 13 is very asymmetrical. And despite Rangiku taking the more laid-back approach, as a lieutenant, there's no question Rangiku is completely devoted to her captain. In battle, Rangiku is almost always seen at Hitsugaya's side assisting. We see this during the Arrancar invasion arc, with Hitsugaya leading the Shinigami coming to Karakura town to monitor Aizen's next move. Rangiku was there, and when the Arrancars actually showed up and started to fight or in the fake Karakura town, Rangiku was always seen. We have to remember she did go up against Gin in order to help Hitsugaya in the battle during the Soul Society arc. Also keeping in mind, Rangiku's relationship with Gin is a huge point of characterization for Rangiku. For her to prioritize Hitsugaya's safety over Gin's unknown ambitions just goes to show the level of devotion Rangiku has towards her captain. What's also worth touching up upon is her relationship with Isshin, the previous captain before Hitsugaya. Even though it can be plausible Tite Kubo wasn't planning on having this being a plot point early on, we still can see more characterization for Rangiku. We see this in a flashback during the 1000-Year Blood War arc. Isshin is avoiding paperwork as a captain. Rangiku, knowing the work will eventually get pawned off to her, urges Isshin to complete his clerical duties as captain. Just for all the work Rangiku was complaining about to be pawned off to Hitsugaya is genuine comedy. And let's not forget the boob joke, which was funny as well. Calling back to the last section, her relationship with Gin was characterized by a degree of distance. Even though Rangiku in her love life could not get the level of companionship that she hoped for, Rangiku's bubbly and highly social personality could be a manifestation of overcompensation in light of the almost estranged relationship she had with Gin.
The blade turns to ashes, and swinging the sword's handle slashes whatever that ash is covering.
Although Rangiku isn't the first one you think of when ranking strong Shinigami, when you look closer, it is easy to build a case on why Rangiku is a very strong Shinigami. Before we get into her individual feats, we have to call back to her backstory, with Aizen stealing a large fragment of her soul, even though there is no canonical statement saying straight out that this nerfed her. Keeping this in mind to what she completes later on is damn near impressive. Starting off, she's the literal lieutenant of the 10th Division in Soul Society, meaning she is second only to Hitsugaya of that division. Even in the flashback of the 10th Division, Rangiku was the lieutenant under Isshin, who was the captain. This can conclude that her road to the lieutenancy was faster than we may believe, since she has been in that position very early on, chronologically speaking. Also, we have to reiterate, Rangiku is incredibly lazy. Rangiku pawns off her work to others and does the absolute least she can. So it wouldn't be hard to theorize that if she actually tried to aim for the captain's seat, that Rangiku wouldn't have been promoted earlier on. But looking at Rangiku's Zanpakuto abilities, her Shikai is named Haineko or Ash Cat. Her Zanpakuto blade transforms into a cloud of razor-sharp ash. Although it resembles smoke or dust, it is actually made up of microscopic blade fragments. Think of it as thousands of tiny swords floating through the air. Anyone passing through the cloud is sliced repeatedly. Rangiku swings the hilt and the ash follows her movement. Haineko has considerably more range than a normal Zanpakuto. Rangiku can attack opponents dozens of feet away without closing the distance. One thing to add is the relationship with Haineko. A Zanpakuto is the manifestation of its wielder's soul. Therefore, its personality, appearance, and abilities often reflect the aspects of the Soul Reaper's inner self. For instance, look at Ichigo and Zangetsu. They both share the protective virtue to help others. But for Haineko and Rangiku, it is completely different. Canonically, we don't know exactly how Rangiku views Haineko because Kubo has never shown them conversing in the manga, but in the anime-only arc, especially the Zanpakuto Unknown Tales arc, we can get a much clearer look at Rangiku's relationship with Haineko. She clearly looks at Haineko as a lazy slob who barely gets anything done, not realizing this is herself in a nutshell. Looking at Rangiku on the battlefield, in the manga canon, we don't get much in-depth prioritized battles. However, she did throw down. Going back to the Arrancar's initial invasion of Karakura Town, she was a part of the few Shinigami to arrive to the human world, where Rangiku does go up against Nakim. Even though she was initially overwhelmed by his power, when she got the permission to use Gentei Kaijo, Rangiku was able to swiftly defeat Nakim in battle. Now, during the fake Karakura Town arc, she did get the entire right side of her abdomen destroyed by Ion, summoned by the Tres Bestias. However, the fact she was there as an asset to pull up to the fight shows just how needed she was, because Rangiku is someone who had a strong connection to Gin that can't be overlooked. Her chemistry with the other Shinigami on the battlefield can create an opening for others, and overall, she's a pretty strong fighter. At the end of the day, Rangiku is undoubtedly the fanservice character of Bleach. She has some enormous assets that can be overlooked, and her overall beauty takes the screen. However, this does not overlook the fact she had one of Shonen's most tragic romantic arcs with Gin. When you peel back the layers of Rangiku's personality, she functions more as the glue for the Soul Society and others. As a Shinigami, she has competent abilities that can be taken seriously in battle. It wouldn't be crazy to see her as the captain of her own squad. Tite Kubo didn't write the perfect fanservice character by giving a woman huge then finding a plot point for her. Kubo structured a character that had no other way but to affect the plot. And even though Rangiku was a side character, Rangiku couldn't help but take the screen. Not because she was a fan service character. Rangiku is the character fans naturally want to see, and that right there is priceless. Simply said, Rangiku is a perfectly written character, and Tite Kubo sidelined her as fan service. But that's what I think. If you think differently, the same, or want to add more, comment down below. Right after you leave a like and subscribe. Once again, my name is AOI-KUN, and this was my synopsis.